Honiden Matahachi is a failure, and that's okay. You see, when most people think of Vagabond, the majority might point to a character such as Miyamoto Musashi or Sasaki Kojiro. I mean, for a good reason. These two are the embodiment of the story, trudging down the bloody path of becoming the strongest swordsman, defeating anyone who tries to tear that dream away. No one in their right mind would ever point towards Matahachi, and this begs the question, why? Well, under the tale of Miyamoto Musashi lies thousands of forgotten stories. Failing at the bottom means that your story will never be told. History, as they say, is only written by the winners. Defined by the Merriam-Webster dictionary, failure is the omission of expected action, often viewed as the opposite of success. To understand what this truly means, I need to feed you the biggest blue pill in Vagabond. Failure is hard. Now this might seem obvious, but as a reader, we come to experience the journey of Musashi and Kojiro, characters whose resolves don't flinch no matter how tough the road ahead of them lies. Most people, however, aren't suicidal blockheads that can sacrifice everything to achieve a certain goal. Let's be real here. Do you think you, an 18-year-old weeb, sitting at your desk, reading Japanese cartoons, could drop everything in your life just to strive towards a certain goal? And even if you could, after experiencing the pain and suffering along the journey, would you still stick along that path? Characters in Vagabond are still human at the end of the day and are bound to crack under the pressure of their choices. Likewise, it begs the question, why is this the case? If failure is so painful and distressing, what's the point of putting ourselves in a situation where we can fail? Well, like all great stories, the answer lies in an overarching metaphor. Failure and success lies between two sides of the same coin. Two sides of the same coin is generally defined as two things that seem unrelated but are actually closely connected to each other. The word success exists because the word failure exists as well. These two terms cannot live without each other. Without failure, one will never understand the importance of success, and without success, failure would never last. If becoming the greatest swordsman in all of Japan was something that anyone could do, what would be the point of this accomplishment? The coin is why people must struggle to achieve their goals. To achieve a certain goal, something has to be sacrificed. It's what makes this world balanced.
Perfectly balanced, as all things should be.
With failure comes success. For example, in the world of Vagabond, when achieving the higher status of a swordsman, another person must fall down to compensate. Newton's third law states that for every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. For every battle that Musashi has won, there is a loser on the opposite side of the coin. Especially for the life of a wandering swordsman, one must pour their heart, dedication, and soul into becoming the best, or else another person will come from behind and take it away from you. That is just the nature of this world. But what would happen if you put a quote-unquote regular person in the world of Vagabond? What would happen if they couldn't handle the fear of failure? What if they didn't have the resolve to achieve their goals? That is where Honiden Matahachi, the man with a dream too big for his body, comes in. So, how did a guy who cheated on his fiancée, ran away from all of his problems, and performed identity theft redeem himself to become one of the best written characters in all of manga? To fully understand Honiden Matahachi, we must first start off with his childhood and take a look at the chains tying him down. Being raised by his non-biological mother, Honiden Osugi, Matahachi had it constantly ingrained in his thoughts that he had to carry on the pride of the Honiden bloodline. In almost every panel showcasing Matahachi's mother, we can see her talking about how great the Honiden bloodline is. This is where the root of Matahachi's problems lies. Like everyone watching this video, I'm sure that when you were young, you always thought that your parents were right and that they could do no wrong. Especially in Asian cultures where filial piety is so prominent, not obeying your parents is seen as a huge sin. However, as we grow older, that perception fades away. We learn that this world isn't black and white and that our parents can be wrong. At the start of the story, Matahachi does not realize this, which causes him to constantly think about how he looks in comparison to others. Is he the strongest? Is he the manliest? Is he the most respected? Hell, even within the first couple of chapters, we can see Matahachi catering to public perception when trying to have sex with Oko, the person who rescued him and Takezo from the battlefields. When having sex in the dark, Oko asks Matahachi who this is, and trying to convince himself that he is strong, Matahachi lies through his teeth and responds that it is Takezo. Ever since they first met, Matahachi had always considered Takezo to be further along than him. He was more confident, a better swordsman, and was always able to be himself. Being completely shackled to the idea of becoming the strongest, Matahachi ends up with a sort of inferiority complex to Musashi. What blows my mind is that the same inferiority complex leads Matahachi to become trapped in his own world for the next couple of years. The young and innocent dream of becoming the strongest takes a detour as Matahachi trudges down the path of cowardice. Honestly speaking, we gotta give credit where credit is due. At the beginning of the story, Matahachi was actually the one who convinced Musashi to go out to war and make a name for themselves. Surprisingly, Matahachi was the first one to take the step of accomplishing his dream to become the strongest swordsman and not Musashi. While this doesn't mean much in the grand scheme of things, the first step is often the hardest one to take, and it shows that Matahachi isn't just some fraud following a fake dream. He truly wants to be strong, even if that dream was written out for him by his mother. Quickly glancing at other stories, we can find that the trope of following one's dream is something that a lot of protagonists experience. No matter what happens, they all strive down one path to achieve a certain goal. It doesn't matter the pain, suffering, and struggles. If they see a light, they will find a way to make it there. But what separates Matahachi from all these characters? Well, it's the fact that he actually thinks quote-unquote logically. Instead of trudging down the hard path to achieve his dreams, Matahachi constantly turns back as his dedication wavers. But that in itself is an acceptable thing to do. If becoming the strongest meant that your life will be put in danger, then any reasonable person would probably hesitate to continue on that journey. Matahachi listens to his body. When faced with a stronger opponent, his primal instincts tell him to run away. When being criticized in public, he crawls back into his shell, removing any semblance of his true self, wearing a facade. The easy path is often the path that most people take. Hesitation, lack of dedication, and anxiety is what strays many people away off a certain path. To walk down the path of becoming the strongest is to walk down the path of insanity. Everyone is a fool when they are born, chasing dreams that seem unreachable. But only a few who are crazy, such as Musashi, are able to continue down this path without looking back. This is what makes Matahachi so relatable. He does what any normal person would do and chooses the safe option. Nevertheless, it doesn't mean that either path is wrong. You see, nothing in this world is black and white. With hesitation comes safety and certainty, and with resolve comes danger and uncertainty. You can't have both sides, and like most people, Matahachi will choose the safe option. The real tragedy of Matahachi comes with the fact that he can't accept the path that he takes. Matahachi has an idealistic sense of strength, and in his mind, the only way to live is to live like Musashi. In all honesty, Matahachi wasn't trying to achieve his own dream, but instead, he was striving towards an image that was projected onto him. The idea of strength that was ingrained within his mind as a child. Having the weight of his bloodline on his shoulders, Matahachi must put on a mask to fill in the spot of the Honeiden successor. But like all people who hide under a mask, there comes a day where people can see through you. This is what makes Matahachi's breakdown one of my favorite scenes in all of manga. After countless years of running away, Matahachi wants to end his life, but like the coward he is too scared to do so and breaks down, exclaiming that he is weak, that he doesn't want to show his weakness to anyone, that he is nothing compared to Musashi. To be able to truly feel proud of yourself and the body you live in is something that a lot of people experience with coming of age. There comes a point where you are so fixated on what is above you that you become unable to see your true self. Only a select few reside at the top, and to accept that you are just another regular human being is something that you must come to terms with. But like I mentioned earlier, being the strongest swordsman doesn't mean you've accomplished everything. There is more than one way to live a life. Matahachi is a weak person trying to be strong. While others may walk down the path of a swordsman, it usually doesn't go that way for a lot of people. Hesitation, mistakes, and diversions creates failures. Because of these, you try to turn around. You're hit this way and hit that way, but your path, which you lost due to hesitation, surely expands more than anyone else. There is only one Honeiden Matahachi in this world. Kinder than anyone else, he can truly become someone that Musashi wasn't able to be. In essence, Matahachi's entire character development is based on a coming-of-age story. But especially in the world of Vagabond, all of Matahachi's actions are emphasized as they all come with a consequence. A common theme in coming of age is responsibility for one's action. To be able to own up for your own actions is something that separates a man from a child. While Matahachi initially runs away from all of his problems, as he learns about the harsh nature of the world and undergoes retribution, he realizes the depths of his actions. A prime example of the implications of his actions is when Matahachi runs away from swordsmen challenging him to a fight after questioning the legitimacy of the fake alias Sasaki Kojiro. When running away from all of his problems, the swordsman chased Matahachi and encountered his family. This ultimately led to the death of his uncle, the person who believed in him from the start and convinced his mother to let him go to war. While Matahachi definitely did not intend for this situation to occur, actions speak louder than words. At the end of the day, even if your intentions were good, the outcome is what impacts people the most. I want to close this video off with my favorite quote from Vagabond. What you see in others is a reflection of yourself. Throughout the story, the idea that Matahachi was supposed to be the parallel and rival to Musashi is heavily hinted at. However, there is a clear distinction between when it is hinted. This is important because the rivalry to Musashi is always hinted by Matahachi and no one else. If you take a look at the journey of Miyamoto Musashi, not once has he ever thought about Matahachi and looked at him as his rival. Now compare this to Matahachi, where in almost every panel, it seems that he's comparing himself to Musashi. We can see that Matahachi is living in his own world, putting unrealistic expectations on himself. He believes that he was the destined one to stand beside Musashi. But when Matahachi meets the real Sasaki Kojiro, he realizes that he was never a rival to Musashi ever since he entered his own world. To be able to acknowledge one's failure is what makes Matahachi grow as a character. Likewise, as Matahachi reconvenes with Musashi for the first time ever since he ditched him back in chapter 7, he begins to realize the difference between him and Musashi. All these years, as Matahachi has been running away, Musashi has been tirelessly training. When Matahachi looks at Musashi, all he can think about is why. Why is he always ahead of me? What did I do to deserve all of this? After yelling at Musashi, exclaiming that he was just another lazy swordsman having sex with Otsu every night, he deservedly gets slapped by Musashi as the two part ways. This was one of my favorite scenes in Vagabond. How does one look in the eyes of others? In our own eyes, the image that you create of other people often don't reflect reality. They are often a disappointment. When Matahachi was looking at Musashi, he wasn't looking at the real Musashi. He was looking at an idealistic version of him that he created in the few years they hadn't seen each other. The Musashi that was always on his mind, and the story that was always on his mind. That story reflects your own true self. This is the story of the failure, Honiden Matahachi. Holy shit, guys, you don't realize how long it took me to make this. Editing all of these clips were really hard, and getting the correct manga panels were even harder. It was a pretty fun process though, and I thoroughly enjoyed it even though it took such a long time. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and subscribe. These vids take a hell of a lot of time, and just remember that I appreciate every single one of you who subscribed. If you want to help this channel, make sure to tell your friends or other people about my videos so it can spread like wildfire. Also, originally for this video, I was going to do a collaboration with The Masked Man and talk about Vagabond, going in depth on Inui's work. However, the more I edited this video, the more I began to realize that this was never going to fit with the video. So I will be uploading the fill video with the masked man as a separate video. Here's a sneak peek of that video.
Throughout his journey, we see the need of him to surround himself with other people because he understands that the other people are necessary in order to keep his own like inner darkness in check, right? But when it comes to a character like Matahachi, I think it's very important that that type of character is introduced within a series, because if you have a character who fails and is incapable of following along a path similar to our protagonist, well, then that shows not all people are cut out for the same journey. Not every person is cut out. And now, mind you, I don't think this is anything necessarily determined by birth, right? But I think your mentality and how you handle certain failures and how you handle certain obstacles, not everybody in life is going to be cut out to reach the top, just because I think that's a thing that...
The reason why I don't want to upload that video onto this channel is because I wanted to switch my content to scripted and well-edited videos only. So I'll probably post the full interview with the masked man on my second channel. Anyways, if you haven't subbed to the second channel yet, go do that right now, link in the description. That being said, I have no idea how I was able to talk about Matahachi for so long. Matahachi is literally a side character of Vagabond and only has like 30 chapters dedicated to him. With Vagabond being 300 plus chapters long, there's still a ton of content that I haven't covered, and maybe I'll get to it in the future, who knows. For the next video, I'll probably switch up the genre a bit and might go into the slice of life genre and explain how that genre works. Who knows what's next, but expect high quality content in the future. Thanks for all the support so far. This has been Hyacinth. Peace.